Hello out there. You are listening to another episode of Night Caller Bigfoot Radio. It's December 19th, 2016, and this is the last show of the season. Merry Christmas, everybody. Yep, this is the last show of the year. Of the year. I'm sorry. We'll be back January 2nd. But anyway, I'm here tonight with Lauren and Jeff, and I guess Ricky's still putting the baby to bed. So anyway, we're here. How are y'all doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
Well, you're en route to rescue a injured owl. Is that correct?
Headed out to get a barred owl that was hit by a car, got a broken wing. Texas Wildlife has given me the authority to take possession of it, which, owls are protected species. And
right.
Generally, you even get caught with an owl feather and you can go to jail. But since I'm an animal rehabber, Texas Parks and Wildlife has given me authority to take possession. So here I go.
So somebody has the owl?
Yes.
Okay.
The owl was struck by a car, and a good Samaritan that did not realize they could go to prison for rescuing the owl, which is kind of silly, but,
Yeah.
Called, and once they called me and told me what they had, I had to call the state and get permission from Texas Parks and Wildlife to go and actually take possession of and rescue the owl. Try to rehab it, and if it won't, if its wing can't be fixed, maybe the state will give me permission to take possession of it permanently and maybe use it. My good friend Chester Moore, he has the Children's Kingdom Zoo. He use animals to teach children and things like that. Maybe the state will allow me to keep it and use it as a teaching aid.
Oh, that sounds good. Either way, the owl will be much better off one way or the other. I think it probably prefer to get well and be free, but if not, at least it won't be prey.
It's gonna get a fighting chance one way or the other. That's the thing. It may not survive. I do not know. We'll do everything we can to make sure that it does, make sure that it heals and goes back to the wild. But if it doesn't, it can't go back to the wild, we'll still try to make sure that it survives and has as good a quality of life as possible.
Okay. How are you doing tonight, Miss Lauren?
Fantastic.
You got all your Christmas stuff done? Are you ready for the holidays?
Sure. I'm ready for the holidays to get here so I can be off work and just enjoy all the hard work we've put into getting ready for Christmas,
Yeah.
I
I'm exhausted.
got to confess, I bought one Christmas gift. I'm a
Really?
procrastinator. Yes, I bought my wife some perfume, and that's all that I have bought.
Nice.
Usually I'm that way, Jeff. I usually wait until Christmas Eve and go and get everything on Christmas Eve. I was the world's worst. And this year I actually did it a little bit early, and it was kind of nice. But usually I'm like you. I wait till Christmas Eve, and you would be surprised that the stores are not packed, and there's still quite a bit of choices out there. So on Christmas Eve, you'd be really surprised. And a lot of things are marked down, too. So.
Well, lately I've been the Amazon guy, I'm like,
me too. I so believe in Amazon.
I'm on Amazon ordering something and, hitting that express ship button, trying to get it here.
Is it Prime?
Yeah.
Day delivery? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I did with Lauren and the children, the grandbabies and all. I had it shipped to their house because you never know what will happen, You never know what will come up where you can't get those gifts to them. So I just had it shipped to her, and that really worked out well for me. Number one, I don't have to wrap them.
Yeah, I'm this year. I'm thinking about handing just cash. I got a 24-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son. My daughter's about in a few months going to have my first grandchild. So I'm thinking to myself, if I handed them cash, they'd probably love me just as much.
Oh, yes, they would. You know, you.
Well,
yes, they would. They
I
sure
know my
would.
18-year-old, because he would just go ape crap over a handful of cash. You know. If I do, I'm gonna just get it all in one. So I'll go down to the bank and tell them I get $100 worth of ones. That way it'll be a big, huge roll.
Oh,
you're
wrong.
A whole lot.
I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad at all.
But see, I don't know about giving my 18-year-old. Well, I don't know about giving my 18-year-old a whole bunch of ones. He may decide to go somewhere I don't want him to go with a whole bunch of ones.
Ma.
Well, my wife Mary said we give him a bag full of quarters.
Are you gonna have you got big plans for Christmas, Jeff?
No, ma'am.
No.
The weekend after Christmas is whenever my daughter and her husband are coming in from Mississippi, and that's when we're going to actually have our big celebration, is whenever they come in from Mississippi.
That sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. Well, I've got big plans. I'm very excited. And, yeah. Well, that'd be awesome. But I guess if does anyone have anything to share before we bring on our guest? No? No.
I'm not going to bring our guest on. I think we need to get the guests on. Well, I think this is going to be good.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. We had Robert Kreider on about a year ago, and the people just loved him. And, oh, my goodness, I thought we were never going to hear the end of people asking to bring him back. And so every time, I think I tried a couple of times, and he was always just so busy or out in the field or something. And finally, one day he said, yes, I'll come on, and I like to fill out of my chair. I was like, yes, everyone will be so happy. They want to hear him again. So, Lauren, how about you take it away on that intro, and then we'll bring Mr. Kreider on.
Okay. Night Callers Bigfoot Radio presents Robert Kreider from New Mexico. Currently living in north central New Mexico, Robert Kreider has spent most of his life in the southwest. Mom, you jinxed me.
I told you. Let me read it.
In the southwest regions of the country, as an adventurer explorer specializing in research and recovery. Kreider and his team make up Kryder Exploration with a dedication to exposing hidden truth and life-changing realities of the world. Robert's discoveries have included many encounters with Bigfoot, resulting in a multitude of diverse forms of evidence and research samples. Robert has operated KX for over 30 years in one form or another. He and his team have witnessed Bigfoot and other anomalies throughout their duration, with a concentrated focus on the Bigfoot enigma for the past 5 years. He has worked with Oxford University and the Museum of Zoology, Lausanne, Switzerland, as a multi-sample contributor as yet untested to the now infamous OLCHP project. This work continues by request of the University of New Mexico, Gallup, through the Executive Director, Christopher Dyer, and will be working with Dr. Dyer to develop not only the university study format and curriculum, but workshops and public dissemination seminars and classes. This work will ramp up seriously in the near future with top-notch cooperation. Robert's limitless curiosity leads to his unyielding measures of truth. He has a deep love of the natural world and all creatures. Kryder Exploration is a custom-for-hire research and recovery company. featuring surface surveys, mapping, code breakdown, subsurface imaging, 100 feet deep 3D excavation, archaeology, recovery tracking, first response, investigation research, location, recoveries, and these recoveries include lost cities, ancient technology, treasure, meteorites, dinosaur, fossils, gem, and mineral. The end.
Thank you. The end. Okay. Mr. Kreider, welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio.
Hi, how are you?
I am fine. Where are you at? I'm hearing like a background noise. Are you in your vehicle?
No, actually, it may be the central air in this building, or the heater.
Oh, okay. But when you're talking,
I can turn down the mic a little bit. No, there shouldn't be any speaking.
Okay, that's wonderful. Whatever you did, that really helped.
Okay.
I know that this. You told me to go ahead and use your old bio. Is there anything different on this bio now that may have changed?
Not a lot, actually. Just doing the same general research, more focused on the Bigfoot stuff probably than the recovery aspect this time.
Okay. Robert, how did you get interested in the Bigfoot part of it? Was it an accident, a sighting? How did it start?
Well, excuse me. When I was very young, I actually had a couple of encounters, and one was a scream episode when we were on bikes, and I didn't know what to attribute it to, but that, along with some family stories, and it all kind of came clear what was really running around out there. And when I was young, I saw an insert on TV and a few other early episodes of that were looking into the enigma, I should say. And it was presented at that time as such a mystery, yet it was pretty obvious through personal experience what they were showing that there was a reality to it. And I guess as I grew up, I expected that reality would become clear, and it certainly wouldn't be taken as mythology or folklore solely, or some form of fantasy or delusion. And I learned as I grew older that was the case. And then when I evolved into recovery work, ended up spending more time in the field, probably in the living room, I ran into these creatures quite a bit, and of course into areas that were really remote on an often basis.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah.
Can you hold for just a second? You are breaking up really bad. Are you using the direct connect line? You might not have a connection that's fast enough.
I'm on the direct connect line, yeah.
Okay. Is there any way you can maybe call back in on your cell phone? That way you're clear. You are breaking up quite a bit, and it's
okay. Yeah.
To do that.
Oh no, right? That's no problem. Yeah, I'll right away.
I want people to be able to get this, and yes, if you don't mind, sir.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever.
We'll just wait right here for you. Okay.
I'll be right back. You bet. I'll be right back.
All right. All right. Well, hey, Jeff.
Hey.
Hey, I don't know if you've heard. Yeah, our guest was having he was sounded really choppy, so we've asked him to call back.
I didn't know if it was him or me. I just got into Dinosaur County, and down here they still on dial-up internet,
Yeah. Well, the thing of it is he probably lives, or wherever he was located at, was probably a place where there was not a high-speed connection, and with that direct connect will not work. I wish I could use it, but I can't. I do not have high-speed internet, so it's fast, but not fast enough. We should be calling back any minute now.
We have high speed as high as we can get it out in the country, but
that's
it's still not great.
No. And I have the same problem. If I try to use direct connect, I'm so choppy you can't make out a single word I'm saying. So I hope he comes back.
Oh, he will. He just have to get his find his cell phone. He may not have had it right there in his hand.
Oh, yeah, I can see him now. He's running 2 blocks to his vehicle to get his cell phone and come back. And he'll come back and go, give me a second.
Absolutely.
Well, Jeff, you know, while we're waiting, you could sing us a Christmas song.
Oh, man, we would lose some audience members if I started singing.
Oh, that's what
Lola, hell the blue. Christmas, where's about you?
There you go.
Thank you very much. You know, I mean,
hey, that works.
Well, yeah, my singing makes all the dogs happy.
Me too. I had my coworker at work. She's fairly new. She's been here about a month, and she's in the cubicle next to me. And I told her, I said 3 things about me. I said I talk to myself frequently. I said I smack my gum and don't realize it, and I sing even though I can't, and that doesn't mean I won't.
That's it.
Amen. That's me.
And the first time I started singing, she said, "Oh, the voice of angels." Quite sarcastically, I might add.
Well, I think Robert has called back in.
Yep,
Hi,
I'm
Robert.
on here.
Are you back with us? Yay!
Yep,
oh,
I'm
you
back,
sound
I'm back.
marvelous. Oh, you sound marvelous, too. I'm so glad that your cell phone worked. And you probably have the same problem as me. Where you're at, you're too far out to really have a good connection, because I wish I could use that direct connect. It sounds so good when it really works. But
Yeah, when we first started, I think it sounded good, yeah.
Yeah, it did. And then it's like the longer you talked, the worse it got. It was just really choppy. So I know you don't want to have to repeat yourself, but kind of very quickly, can you go back over again how you got into this, and then we'll move on to a new question.
Okay. Well, like I said, when I was a kid, I had a couple of experiences, and later on found out that based on what had happened, that it was probably Bigfoot. There was a lot of family stories because we were ranchers and farmers and ranched a lot of the rough country in northern New Mexico and the high mountains. And so the tales came down from that. And then I also, when I was young, I saw a few shows like In Search Of and a couple others that were on at the time, and those inspired a curiosity. And I guess the reason that I actually got to researching it is like a lot of other enigmas is as I got older, I expected to see what I could tell was a reality in some form or another. I expected to see more work put onto that and more truth being revealed and things coming to light. And of course, you know, what came to light was, you know, it was perceived and pushed as a myth and a fantasy when there was an obvious reality to it. And I think later on, after having more experiences conducting exploration work as an adult, frequently sometimes, and then realizing the information that was out there at the time, and this is around, 2001 or 2000, I should say. We videoed one in 95, see, and then around 2000, I was really looking and seeing what was getting online, and I was thinking, wow, you know, I need to show and start telling what we've been involved in, and I did a little back then, and then waiting and watching through the years till recently, and it was about 5 years ago, or a little more now, just not seeing the evidence and things come to light the way they should be, and I got seeing it get popularized and turned in a lot of hype and a lot of misconception, and it's nobody's fault. It comes from a lack of, of evidence, and there's a lot more thought going into it than there is physicality, unfortunately, and so we intend to entertain a lot of avenues. And seeing this occur, I just thought, we're doing high-end exploration work, and it takes, a high sense of discipline and self-skepticism and scientific methodology and things. And I just thought, if we just applied this to it in a direct manner and try to lead the forces toward better data collection and things, we might get this somewhere. And so we went ahead and did that. And, of course, to bring us up to speed, I was, approached by Oxford at one point, and I was and cooperated with them, and I was approached by UNM New Mexico here, or UNM Gallup here in New Mexico, and to do a field DNA collection for them based on a witness episode. And So, we got into the academic university level, on that end, and that's kind of where we are and have been now. So.
Well, that's all of our listeners out there, that is the thing that they liked about you, was that you were grassroots. You were, involved scientifically and physically in your research. And you weren't really somebody who really blew up the internet. You were serious about what you were doing, and your methodology was what was so attractive to a lot of our listeners. They found you extremely credible, and they really liked you. I don't know if you heard me talking about that, but they were just blowing up our email asking us to have you back. And I'm so glad you're here. I
certainly appreciate the interest and also the appreciation for the effort. And I think, a good portion of the listeners probably understand what it takes to get to this point in this type of research and in this field. This is a tough one. I'll give you this. When you're hunting an ancient treasure, it's all up to you and everything else. It doesn't move itself around. So every time you break down all the data and get a good idea and go after it, it's now 10 miles over there. So this is kind of an ultimate challenge, and I appreciate the listeners taking the time to have their interest and voice that they'd like me back, and also the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Can you tell us about the first time you ever had an experience with a Sasquatch?
The first experience directly that I can attribute to it was riding BMX bikes in the forest in Washington State. And we had a trail that went down the mountain real quick, and it went through a deep gully about 15 feet, and we'd go down in that and then jump out the other side. And we usually did that in groups of 2 or 3, and we would go do that in the day and then take off. And one day I was on the way home, and I took a diversion through there by myself and down the mountain real quick and made that turn and came out the other side of that gully and got up in the air about 6 feet, and all of a sudden something about 30 feet in front of my path of travel screamed at me loud enough to just ungodly loud, just the most horrific thing I've ever heard. And I think I landed about half sideways on the top of the hill on the dirt. I didn't even make a foot forward after that. And popped my way back down through that gully and out the other side and left. And I didn't know what in the world, at that time I was 14, and even in Washington State, it wasn't really the first thing you come to. And we only lived up there a couple of years at that point, so and just not much talk about it right there around Vancouver. So, but that was, the first experience I can directly attribute. Yeah.
Even though it was an ungodly scream and everything like that, did you feel like there was more to it that actually frightened you? Like maybe that you had the sense that it was there. You didn't see anything, but were you knowledgeable about local wildlife and knew that it wasn't something normal?
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know. You wouldn't even have to be knowledgeable about any wildlife. It's in. It rings your genetic fear pretty hard. You just know it's fight or flight. It's right there. And being a 14-year-old kid, by themselves in the forest and whatnot, and it's the surprise. Of course, it's the amplitude of a scream at close range is so heavy that you just not only hear it, you feel it, maybe more so. And that was about the last thing that I expected, when I was going down through there. So,
were you aware of that Bigfoot? There was such a thing as Bigfoot. Had you seen the Patterson-Gimlin film or anything like that? I mean, did it even occur to you that's probably what it was?
Well, at that, there was a moment or two in time when I entertained it, but I think the thought of it at that time was too scary to really go there.
Right.
And
right.
and so you just kind of bury it out as something freaky, But yeah, naturally, I absolutely knew of Bigfoot and stuff. Like I said, we had stories since I was a young child that I listened to, here and there, and most of them were just sightings in passing, or the local stories up around Mora, New Mexico, by the local Spanish families that had occupied that area for the last couple hundred years, and so yeah, I was certainly aware, but really I didn't put 2 and 2 together and didn't really want to at that point, and plus we're so far removed from any of the grounds where I guess any of those stories were related to me. I just don't think I made that association at that point.
I see. So eventually you ended up in New Mexico. And so how did you, you would think Washington State, automatically you kind of go to that there would be Sasquatch there. But New Mexico? Why are there Sasquatch in New Mexico?
Well, they don't know where the state lines are, so,
Mm-hmm.
they just...
Are you talking about the Four Corners area, or are you located there, or?
Well, actually, we work a few areas. The main one I'm working now, it's at basically the base of the Rockies. So you run down the Rockies, and you eventually hit a range called the Santa de Cristos, and they call them the foothills of the Rockies, yet they go, 10 or 11,000 feet. And and then it's just a few sparse valleys there, and then they separate the next few mountain ranges down that run all the way down to lower central New Mexico, where it gets pretty arid. Yet all these mountains are pine, and some of them go to alpine. And so it makes a zone, similar to Washington State, or even in some ways it's basically more virgin, I should say. There's a higher diversity of species and things because most of this stuff had never been logged out. A lot because the geology, it's so rugged and jagged and everything when you get into the high mountains here. So it was never anywhere that really allowed a lot of access. But more so it's the environment and the habitat and necessity for territory, that I believe really puts them where they are. When people tend to think in terms of boundaries, but really a boundary is just, where's the water, how far can I walk from water, and things like that. So
I see. In regards to the type of topography that you have there, it's got to be a hard place to do research in.
Well, yeah, some of it is. It goes both ways, yeah. So the GLST area where I work most frequently with the family down there, that's really convenient. It has its attributes in the fact that it's got easy access and things, but at the same time, they're right in amongst people, you could say. And so, like when I mean that is individuals up in the high mountains and things like that are just like deer or other wildlife. They're not used to being around people, so dealing with people's more frightening experience, or they're less shy in this environment in a sense. In other words, they won't just run away from you. They've gotten used to using their stealth, hiding out, laying low, right amongst all these groups of people. So if you bide your time and do your research right and try not to be quite so foreign and just pass through the environment, then you're more or less taken as one of those general people who have no idea they're there. And so in one way or another, it's a little easier. And then in some ways, of course, they're also used to people's habits, and they know how to work people and get around people and things like that. So if you try to spook one and get it to run off, or it won't, and they understand the way we work in the field a lot better maybe than some of the ones in the mountains do. So.
Wow. Okay, so can you relate some of the experiences that you've had there in New Mexico? And also, I would like to know, how do you go about your research? Do you do strictly day research, night research, both? How do you work? And what kind of equipment do you use? I know that's three questions that go.
That's okay. Well, day and night. So, and I've noticed that at least in this region or whatever, I think it's probably everywhere, that activity is 24/7 as far as it goes, not maybe for all the subjects, but we see daytime events and we have daytime vocals and things, and we have them at night as well, although they do differ. And so we do both. And when I can, I try to spend as many hours as I can, And there are some areas like in the Sandias and stuff, or the CRST area or PLSA in our presentations. Those areas we don't normally go in at night. For one, they're actually off limits with state wildlife and stuff, and then two, there's a good reason they're off limits. So there's the individuals in there don't tolerate people very well, and you end up with a lot of adverse interaction instead of some type of quality encounter or being able to actually witness their habits. And that's part of the key to the research I want to conduct. It isn't going out to have an experience. I've had a few of those I didn't even want, that were bad. So, so I'm not really shooting so much for that as I want to see what they do when I'm not around. I want to see how do you spend your time and where your kids hang out, who's babysitting and all that, because with any type of creature comes the whole family aspect, So.
Well, my question is how are you going to do that when you're not there?
Well, that's the whole thing, That's the hard part. You do everything is inferred. So basically, physical and trace evidence left behind has to infer the activity that came before it, So, and that comes back to your third part of your question, is the technology used, to do this stuff. Like today, I'm getting more into the aerial stuff and drone stuff, but not using them in the normal manner. These program flights where they just go over and look at an area and they're hoping to see a Bigfoot. I'm actually using it to do trace evidence collection in the form of photography and documentation. But I can cover ground looking for tracks, broken twigs, and the type of tree sign that I know the family leaves behind. I've been getting a little better at that, and that's really paying off so far on a broad aspect. So in that sense, I'm applying that technology in a little different way. And of course, that gets a little spendy, but it's worth it, because like today I covered, 4 or 5 miles and did it in a manner where I didn't influence the environment. I even overflew a coyote at one point, and he never looks up at the drone. He looks around sideways for a minute, but he never looks up. And so being able to enter the environment without putting my feet on the ground, leaving my scent or my tracks, is kind of important to me, and that's allowing us to do that. And of course, then we also use thermal and things when we do on-site or reactive investigation. So if someone has activity that's going on, and which is pretty rare, they call us wily activity, but then we respond with different technology generally, and that's the thermal and things for a closer, more pinpoint to the moment, encounter. So there's a pretty wide array of tech that I'm trying to apply. It's just time and effort, time.
In dealing with witnesses, do you have your own rule of thumb on whether you use your instincts to whether this person's telling you the truth, or are you pretty fortunate to have a good sense of people?
Oh yeah, doing the recovery work and stuff with, and when you're doing some of that included a treasure and things like that, you end up meeting about the best of people and about the worst of people, and hearing every single story there is and every single lie seen and broken. And so, yeah, I've got a bullshit meter about 9 miles wide. You need it. It's not real hard to tell. If somebody heard a screamer sound and they're honestly relating it to you for no other reason, and not trying to attribute it to whatever, but they're curious as well, that's pretty easy to go on. And then when someone claims to have had a more dramatic encounter, or especially a sighting, it's not hard at all to tell if they're pulling your leg. It's just not hard at all. It's easy, because you either have or you haven't. And if you have, then you represent yourself in a manner as a person who has, because it's a life-changing thing, and there's no way around it. So, yeah.
So on average, the sightings in the New Mexico area, what is the average height, would you say, of most of the sightings?
8 to 11.
Okay.
8 foot to 11 foot, and then a lot of sighting of family and young, but a lot to do with where the people here live and how multi-generational some of these people or these families were, and how remote they were for so long, so.
Yes. Well, how it would be difficult for them to leave a track if it's rocky, shoal type. I'm trying to think of ground. It's very rocky, pebbly, and I imagine you'd find very many good castable tracks, do you?
No, it's difficult. Matter of fact, tracking is tough in itself. So, and then you also look at the individual subjects. Depending on how much time they have, if they're traveling or if they're reacting and hiding, or if they've got plenty of time to mull around on their own, and with these surfaces available. So if they have these especially adults, if they have these harder surfaces or patches of them, or like you say, more pebbly or whatever, or hard packed clay, then they'll use those to avoid leaving prints in the softer areas around. And
they do the same thing here too. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, step around. That's why we find a lot of kid prints, and some of the best adult prints that we find, or that I have found, is in retrieving the little ones. Because the little one will get where he's not supposed to be, and then you'll get one or two prints of a big one, I guess, reaching out and grabbing them, because little ones that disappear in thin air. So I think it's just snatch and grab, get out of the sand, kid. Yeah. So other than that first scream that you encountered when you were 14 years old, have you ever heard any other audio that you suppose could possibly be a Sasquatch? Well, yeah, and I think I shared with your listeners before, we've, since we started back up in late 2010, we've recorded, hours and hours and hours of vocals that couldn't be attributed to really anything else. And whatever they are, it's all the same creature, because we sometimes we'll do a vocal recording that's based on direction, and we'll track the group down the river system by the amplitude, and then we'll go back down the next morning right at daylight, and then we'll actually find anything from feet print to hair or whatever, based and even scat. And what sets it apart is, like with anything else, is it's got to be repeatable, and when we don't have the 3 or 4 forms of evidence, any one of those, we generally don't have the other, So when there's no feet print anywhere, or anything you attribute to their feet, then you don't have scat, generally, or hair or anything else. It always runs together, and this is something that's, I've even had some people ask me, quite a bit about the scat, because they say, why don't you collect it or whatever? But when we find an area where they're at for a week maybe, or 3 days, 4 days to a week, you might find anywhere from a dozen piles to 40, 50, 60 piles from that family unit, in that area. And then they'll move a few miles. So it's certainly not rare or whatever. But
you really can't do DNA on scat.
No, it's not viable.
No.
Yeah. There has to be something in it, from what it explained to me, that basically scrapes the gut wall, or at the beginning or the termination point is all you would get anyway, they said, and it really wasn't worth it. So, but I mean, I do have a bunch of samples that I keep in a special cooler, and everything, but it's more to represent the diet. When I see them eating something that's weird, then I'll go ahead and say, wait a second, now they're introducing this, where are they getting this? It might be one or another form of bird seed. Like, people that own these ranches out here, they're pretty sparse. There's not many, even though they are close to the basin these critters live in. But each one feeds their own kind of wild bird seed, and everybody's local. And over time, I figure out who's buying what. And so if they're buying that black sunflower seed for the jays, or they're buying that wild mix with the other stuff in it, then I find feces with those things in it from raiding those bird feeders and raiding that stuff. And so I can kind of tell whose place they're going to. And same thing with sheep fur. Once I find sheep fur or something in the scat, then it's like, all right, well, who just lost sheep, So.
Wow. Okay. Do you work with anyone else, or do you mainly work by yourself?
These days, I've done a lot of lone trips in. It's just because others are busy or tied up, and also I'm getting a little more specialized in what I'm doing. We're not just really going out and doing as much of the general recon stuff as we were, that pinpoint investigation or recon stuff where you just go in and look for evidence, and you record and check for audio and wait all night and things. And I haven't been doing as much of that because we've either been doing more as a response to specific activity and things. So even the personnel is changing and things of who I work with, not just, alone or not. It's individuals more geared towards certain aspects. And speaking of that, I've even picked up a couple people here recently just because they are local enough to participate, but I'm trying to investigate an area that's really dangerous. It's not so remote by miles, 7 or 8 miles in. A long ways for some people. It's not for us, but it's very rugged. And being dangerous where it is, it's a long way out if you have a problem or you have to get out, And so I'm still rigging up a couple new individuals for a team. But other than that, I've been doing a lot of solo, and which has ended up being pretty scary a couple times. And then so.
Well, I was going to have you tell us about that, but we're gonna go ahead and go to break. I think Jeff might be back with us. I know Jeff was wanting. Jeff, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. We're going to go to break, Jeff, and when we come back, I have one more question for him, and then I know you've been wanting to talk to Robert, so we're going to take a good little break, and we'll be back in just a moment, everyone.
Okay.
Ho, 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 and Merry Christmas. And we're back with Night Callers Bigfoot Radio, and our guest tonight is Robert Kreider from New Mexico. And Jeff was with us and he fell out. So I'll get him when he comes back. Are you back with us, Robert?
You bet, I'm here.
Hi. Okay, you were talking about your solo excursions being a little bit hair-raising. Now, our listeners love to hear about those kind of experiences. So could you share a particularly good, scary experience with our listeners?
Well, one probably is personally the scariest I've actually, for myself, it's ever been. I certainly felt more fear than I ever have. And that was about 4 months ago. I had gone, Bob Fenstermaker is a great asset to the team. He and I had gone in one day, and after 4 years of tracking the family and even Mother's big 20-inch prints, we had still never seen anything we could attribute to the big male. And about 3/4 of the way through the afternoon, about 4 o'clock, when the light started to get a little lower, Bob noticed some prints on the ground that were so big that it didn't fit in your brain for a minute. I mean, you wanted to make 3 different things out of it because it was so large. And we checked the compression on the whole track, and we did every bit of work we could to verify, and they measured out to be 23 inches. And so after we found those, we moved back. They were up out of the riverbed a little bit, kind of in the hard pack where it's dusty ground, but it takes a lot of weight to push in deep. And cattle and stuff will push in a little bit, but this individual had pushed in this hard pack about 1/2 inch or a little more all the way. And then we got into the riverbed in a spot where it was hard and solidified by bromide salt, calcium, and things that had hardened all the gravel together. And he was still leaving prints there, get about 1/2 inch compaction in the rocks. And so it really didn't matter, And it was. I could jump and push my foot as hard as I could and kick it and everything else. I couldn't even push the ground in. And seeing the heel mark and the spread in that surface, we really realized, wow, this guy's just a tremendous amount of weight, But we hadn't found a cast or a print that I felt I could cast. I wanted something that dictated the individual and the print clearly. And I was pretty confident that if I kept working the river there over the next few days, I might be able to find some because that surface changes so dramatically between loam and clay and sand and different things. So I went back in the next day with another team member, Rodney Fox, another great asset. And he could only stay about 40 minutes. So we went in and immediately we got kind of around the same area, and I showed him where those wardens were, and they were blown out quite a bit. And we noticed where a deer had obviously been snagged crossing the open riverbed there, right as he got close to one bank with some cover. But we didn't see any prints from what grabbed him, but you could obviously see where he had kicked and the feet had, spun around big circles and everything, and then no more deer tracks. And this was real fresh, and you could smell deer, not real strong, but any hunter knows what I'm talking about, especially if you clean one. Mm-hmm. They have a very specific odor, and so Rodney was, stayed around as long as he could, but he had to take off. So he went ahead and went out, and I just held position for about 30 minutes, kind of let the ripples settle in the pond, so to speak. And I moved on up riverbed a little, and I crossed the open sand, and I noticed a big dirt pile across the bank, and I thought, wow, that's unusual, and I'll just walk over and look at that. And it was really an insignificant pile of dirt, but it gave me a way to walk up from the sand bottom and not go through the grass or the leaves, because that dirt ran right down to the edge. And it was real soft powder. And I walked up over that powder on that little hill, and it was about 3-4 foot higher than the surrounding ground. That was, of course, higher than the riverbed. And in front of me, I had open space about 30 feet or so, and then there was the thicket we call the bosque. That's the dense tree cover that surrounds these riverbeds and these little riparian zones. And it was pretty dense, but the outer trees there weren't, and I could see some darkness and shadow in there. And I caught a little bit of sound on my left, and I sat down and knelt down. And I thought, I'll just take just a quick listen for a second. And I had some things in my pocket, and I was going to get them out. So I stood back up. And right when I stood back up, right in front of me again, and just explosion of movement happened. And I say explosion, and I can't even remark how quick it was. And it's not just the speed, and it wasn't even just the size. It was the combination of both, because nothing that big can move that fast is what your brain repeats to you over and over and over.
Exactly.
And it ended up, I measured out, I thought it was farther at first, and I measured out, it's 57 feet in front of me, which imagine a semi-truck from the front bumper to the rear bumpers, average about 60 foot. So that's about the distance I was, and this thing was so massive. Now, this ended up being the same subject that left a 23-inch print, so I hope people can appreciate the mass of what this subject was like. It was I spook cattle all the time. I spook bulls. Brahma bulls, big bulls, 2,000-pound bulls. You surprise them. You walk right up on them. Sometimes they burst into movement, and I do that all the time. It doesn't even shake me. This thing, just the explosion of movement and sound, it sounded absolutely horrendous, and it did. It put me into literal shock. And my legs wanted to run, and I was trying to stop myself, and which I did. I didn't run, but my legs literally, I thought they were just going to take off and leave my torso there. And and then I'm glad I didn't drink a Gatorade or anything right before I went, or that probably would have left right there too. But right after that happened, I looked deeper and it attracted my attention. I looked that way, and there's just this huge black mass. Now it's not the black that was lower. Now it's the black has risen, and I could see through the sunlight spaces. Maybe the spaces and the gaps were 6 inches to a foot across, and there was higher cover, and the bottom 4 or 5 feet was a lot more open. And even with that, he had to completely bend over, basically quadruped under there, because he couldn't fit in any other position. And he was dead still right after he exploded into movement. And I looked real hard, and then he took off to his right, to my left. And when he did, of course, then that's when I got to see all the form. The moment it moved through that one layer of cover, I could see everything. And then to top it off, I tried to immediately tell myself, all right, it's a bull, and just hold on. And right, just to top it off, then I could see the long shadow down in behind him of 2 legs, and it was obvious, And I thought, oh my gosh, and then he held position. He moved probably what sounded to be 20, 25 feet, and he just stopped. And then all of a sudden, right to my left, about 40 feet, 45 feet, I thought it was farther originally, I get one stands up, the one I initially heard, and just starts walking off. And he sounds in the hundreds of pounds, not in the thousands, basically. And big, but not near what just happened in front of me. And, of course, I'm about half frozen. My heart's about to come out of my chest. And, you know, I mean, really, I thought I was gonna pee. I did. I swear to God, I did. And so I texted my girl, and then I said, I don't know what's about to happen because this thing's close to me. It's already, I spooked it. You can tell this is a bad situation. And I'm telling you, it wasn't walking off to no other place, or it was right
and
there.
You were
it
by
run.
yourself completely, sir.
Yeah,
completely by yourself.
Yeah. And I got that text out, and thankfully, because they usually don't go from there. And it did. And then I thought, well, I'm just going to break a camera out regardless of whatever happens. You know, it's going to get on camera anyhow. And then, you know, your curiosity drives you. So I didn't go right in after the big one, but I did try to go in after the one to the left and get a look. And you can hear it even. I posted the video on YouTube there. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. I'm going to get it up on YouTube. But you can hear him plainly walking, and there's no question whatsoever what it is. A biped. You can just hear it plain as day, even on the camera. And I get right in there where he was just walking, and he's not there. And we go through the foliage, and I can't find him anywhere. I can't find anything else either. You know, a cow and I'd have felt better if I found a cow at this point. And I thought, I don't know what to do. In a weird way, I was torn. I was real torn. And this is where I was scared to death. I mean, I really was. And people think, well, that doesn't sound all that scary, but they didn't experience that. You know, to have you and it there, and you realize I am at maximum 4 steps, maybe 2.5 seconds. I can't even turn to run before this could bust out of them trees and nail me. You know, you have no alternative, you know. But I thought, well, I'm going to try this. And I've done it before. I used to do it with recovery work inside of caves. I figured, well, if you could go 1 more foot and nothing happened, then you could probably go 1 more foot and nothing will probably happen. And then I usually figure if I could put my arm through there and nothing happens, well, my body could probably go through and nothing will happen either. So I use that logic to get me a lot. So I tried it on this one, and I went back to where the big guy was because I knew he hadn't gone anywhere because the mass was so incredible. You would have heard it. You'd have heard it. Yeah, I felt it. I mean, the ground, it's just unbelievable. And so I went ahead and went in after him, and sure enough, he's not where I did hear him move a second time. We even hear that on camera, actually. On the video, you can hear him move the second time. He changed his position, and he goes farther off to my left. He goes farther into the trees and things. But the area is pinched in a gap, so you got the riverbed, and parallel to it, you got a dirt wall. It's about 15 foot or something, a little higher. And then in between that dirt wall and the river, it's all thick trees. You can only see about 10 feet through the brush and trees. And that whole gap right there was maybe 60 feet wide. So he's in that 60-foot stretch right there. So you can't run out the back of it. And I thought, well, I'll just kind of weasel through here with the camera, and he's got to be in here somewhere. I know he's still here, you know.
You're crazy. I have to say you're crazy right now. Everyone's crazy.
You know, it's that way. It's curiosity. It's just curiosity. I don't know, you know. And so I did. I went 1 more foot, 1 more foot, 1 more foot, and I'm looking at the camera, and you can make him out. I could actually make him out. You can make him out back behind all the stuff, and you just convince yourself it's something else at the time, so you can go 1 more foot. So I do that, and then of course on the film you can kind of tell he's back in there. He's this huge dark mass. There's nothing dark there, and I go through those immediately. When I get in there where he was laying, you can see the ground disturbance and the breakage, 4 to 5 foot high, where he rolled over in there. And what he did is he went from a laying position, kind of a half fetal on its side, something like that position, to rolled over facing me, spun around, rolled over, kind of quadruped looking. So just through that motion, though, he filled that gap 4 or 5 foot high and broke a bunch of top stuff. And then I found a real deep foot implant in there, just had to be 4 inches into the ground on one side where he pushed real hard and made a turn. And it's massive. I mean, it looks like an elephant stepped in there. It's unbelievable deep and big. It's pretty amazing. And so we get that on video, and you could tell where he had hooked the right turn through a gap and gone out toward that dirt wall. And so I went ahead and went out around there, and I thought, well, I'm going to come around this corner. What's going to be between the foliage and the dirt wall? You know, it's either going to be him or it's going to be a bull, you know, one or the other. That's what's going to be standing there. And I go walking around the corner, and he ain't there. There's no bull.
That's not a surprise to me. Yep, neither is the bull.
Right. And I look on the ground, and that's where I see the second set of good 23-inch prints. And now these, though, are 4 minutes, 5 minutes old. And as I start taking their picture, he starts breaking branches right where I just walked through with the camera. 50 feet from me. I mean, I just walked through there, took a right, took a left. There's 50 foot of trees, maybe at the most, and he's breaking stuff right where I just was, walking back and forth, while I'm taking his pictures. Well, now I'm the thing between the dirt wall and the trees, and he's in front of my way out. See?
Oh, no.
So, right. And I'm thinking, well, it's an animal. He's going to leave. Now he can leave. I'm the one kind of stuck back here. He can go away if he wants to. Does he? No, he doesn't go anywhere. He just keeps doing things to intimidate me. Well, what can you do? So I just tried to keep my senses and hold my ground, and I kept sneaking around to where I thought I could get a look at him, but instead of moving opposite my movement, he would move to meet me in this little pinch gap. And that was so scary to me because no animal does that unless it's going to eat you. So I don't know what the outcome was, and I couldn't figure out what the outcome was. And then I tried this 3 or 4 times, and you can hear even on the video, he's breaking and popping stuff. And so I backed off and I sat down for about 30 minutes, and I wrote what was going on to a few people, and I sent some pictures out of the prints, and since I had signal there, and then I noted in front of me now that smaller individual, a few 100 pounds, and another one were pacing in front, and then that big one was back in the thick tree. So now they're basically all the way in front of me. So I could climb the dirt wall and go ahead and take off. It wasn't like I was totally stuck there. But I couldn't have gone out back where I was, apparently. I ended up doing it. But so I after I got back up, though, I walked back over the trees trying to take one last little look, listen and look. And I guess they just finally got sick of my presence. And the big one that was in there let out a real long, about 7-second, low hum, and then it descended down at the end, I'm just tired of this. And it was obvious they weren't going anywhere. They weren't going anywhere. And they just wanted me to leave. And you could tell. So I was going to go out the back, and I thought, you see me go over the idea in the vid, but I thought, no, I'll just go 1 foot in here, we'll take a look around, and we'll go back where we came from and see what we see. And right again, you could hear them walking on the tape, but as soon as you get in there, they're only maybe 50, 60 feet from me, but they're just keeping them just out of view. And they move out of the way, and I go on through there. And that alone was probably, as far as scary goes, the entire time, you feel like you're going to die.
Terrifying.
So you want to run, and then you start to, but you just got to hold it. And then the next day I went back, and I guess they were upset because where I had sat down, Bob and I went in, and I'm going to produce that, put it up too, but right where I had sat down, they destroyed the ground for about a 12-foot circle, about 6 inches deep. They just ripped the ground to nothing, everything. And right in the middle of it was a 14-inch, it's the smaller individuals, 11.5-inch hominid print with 2 fist prints on either side of it, just where I guess he jumped 1 foot in the middle, put his knuckles down, and went all the way across it. But that was the only print in it. But other than that, the ground was just destroyed. So, yeah.
Well, they were trying to they were trying to leave you a message, I do believe.
Yeah,
I
mean,
wonder if they had a deer in there and they were just waiting for you to go so they could have dinner.
Well, you know
That's
what?
what
I smelled deer so fresh, fresh kill, and it was before I crossed the river, which is probably where they took it out, and then I smelled urine real strong right after I crossed the river. I wouldn't doubt it at all because it had to be killed within 15 or 20 minutes of me coming in. I can't imagine it smelling any longer than that. So you're probably right, and just got frustrated with my presence because they couldn't relax and do what they were going to do.
Exactly. How long would you say this entire thing took? About an hour, maybe? Hour and a half?
Between an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and a half, somewhere in there.
Well, I've always been told I was fearless, but I have to say you get the badge of honor there because I couldn't have done it. I honestly could not have stayed there. I would have had to leave. And I would have left running, most likely.
Oh, I don't know. It's one of those things where you don't know what you're going to do until you're in the middle of it. And
right.
It's like, I could leave right now or I could wait one more second. I could stop right now or I could go one more foot. And, you do that 1 second thing for an hour and a half,
Well, how tall do you think he was, the big guy? I mean, would you say he was, to leave a 23-inch track, if you do all the math on that, generally that means he was 10 or 11 feet tall, at least.
Yeah.
If not.
Or larger, yeah.
Yeah.
The female, since we photographed the female, we've had a couple of witness sightings of her, pretty clear. But we did get a good photograph of her where around objects and clear enough where we could measure her. And she scaled at 10.5 to 11. And I say that because she's 10 to 10.5 slightly bent over. If she was to stand fully erect, she would be between 10.5 and 11 foot. And her foot is right at 20 inches. So sometimes it looks a little longer or shorter basically because the foot's flexible. So it's like, where do you take your measure point? But if you take the average out of 100 steps of hers, she rings in right about 20. So the 23, 11, 12. That's the second set of prints that size we've recorded. So we also recorded another size, that size in the Sandias as well. So, it's just, it's the only two sets I've ever seen, but it does show, I guess just how big the big males can get. But I'll add, in 4 years at that point, 4.5 years, we had never found a print of his, ever. I mean, I found one time where he crossed the frozen river and he left 8-foot step gaps, but you couldn't tell how big the prints were, because they broke all the ice around them too.
Right.
Right. And then on Google Earth, I think October 19 or October 20-something of 2011, actually on Google Earth photographed a set of his prints for about 2 miles down the river. And they have a 5 to 7 foot step gap. The prints measure, almost 2 foot. And
that is amazing.
Yeah. And it's obvious because they're absolutely in line biped, and they go for a couple of miles. And it was right around the time when we did some initial recordings when the male had come in. So, and then I didn't actually see that Google Earth image for like a year after that, and then saw it. I was looking back on those days and saw it. So.
Well, I know Ricky's on here. Ricky, do you have any questions for Robert?
I don't even know what to say. This guy's killing it. He's got tons of stories.
I know it's got I'm just amazed. I do have a question I need to ask you, and it has escaped me. Let me try to remember what it was.
I didn't get to catch how he gets his measurements on his feet print living in Mexico, because when I was in Arizona, I don't know how there could be a footprint of anything. I mean, it's either little bitty pebbles or riverbed stones. I didn't get to see very much mud or even wet terrain that you could see a footprint.
Yeah, the site, at least the GLST area, is basically a riverbed. So it's a range about a mile wide and about 30 miles long. And within that, everything in there is clays and mud primarily.
Okay.
But like the geology here goes anywhere from basalt to bentonite clay, and it's basically, it was all bentonite clay beds that had extrusive bodies that came up through it. So you've got both sedimentary clays that run down and deposit all over the place, and then as well you have these massive natural clay layers that form a lot of the valley structures. So, and you know that bentonite is basically like pudding.
Yeah.
It's absolutely finer than talc if you were to take it down to its constituent. It's potter's clay basically. So
Gotcha.
that's what most of the valley structures are, and then you add sand to that. But you're right. I mean, it's a lot of these surfaces, even that clay, if it's not got moisture and it's been baked or whatever and it's dry, well then yeah, you can walk anything across it. Tracking is really, really difficult. But like most things, it's like tracking a deer across grassland. Well, you wouldn't think you could do that, or 3-foot grass, but you can. And once you get in line with deer, right, look to your side as you walk. If you look forward, you'll never see it. But if you look to your side, you'll pass the line the deer walks, and as soon as you're in line with it, you'll see it.
Yeah.
So facing the sun in the desert regions, and I learned to track in Arizona primarily, so facing the sun is a big thing, and you look for what's called shine. And so in a lot of this hard pack, what their feet will do is just press the pebbles into the surface so that it makes a more homogeneous surface and it looks shinier than the rest, and then tracks show up well. Of course, like I say, getting castable tracks is really tough, and because for one, they're aware of it. Two, I don't even think they like to put their feet in the mud if they don't have to. I mean, that's how it seems. The kids go running through the mud, but the adults usually go around it. So, but yeah, it is difficult. But with the diversity here, and then it goes up into pine needles and forest and stuff too, and that's even tougher. To get a castable print in a pine or conifer forest is pretty difficult as well.
So when you're talking about these 20,
go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When
Rick.
you're talking about these 20 and 23 foot or 23-inch foot impressions, is this like an actual foot imprint where you can see toes and everything, or is this the impression?
No, you can see toe structure in the whole 9 yards. Yeah. The ones in the Sandias cast a whole bunch of stuff, and then we found a handprint that was 16 inches in length, 15 inches in spread from the thumb to the pinky spread out, and we found those big prints. And I had to use the very last of my plaster and poured most of a print that was right at 22, 23. And it's 19 inches to the end of the pinky toe. So, and that one had a dermal pattern, and it was along with about another 100 other tracks, but they were decomposed granite gravels, probably 8-inch fines. And so that was really, 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 really tough to find one, and plus steep slopes, so it was tough to find one we could cast. But yeah, so most of them have enough detail, or I won't even bother. I don't cast 99% or 99%. We don't cast at all. I try to get something that's got a dermal pattern so I can identify the subject.
Have you ever been back to this place that you had this encounter?
Oh yeah. Actually, I was looking at it from the air with the drone today, but I've been back over there a couple times, and they haven't been back at that specific spot, I don't think, since I was, other than maybe just moving through. But like I say, they have, literally 30 square miles, and they use the young males and stuff frequent quite a ways out. They even go to the Ortiz Mountain, which is about 3-4 miles away. They go up out of there and hang out up in that country. So where they are, changes, and it's really hard to predict. So just doing the research, I accidentally run into them more than I do on purpose. I try to kind of avoid the group if I can, because I don't want an adverse situation where I end up running them out of the area and I can't study them anymore.
Wow.
But yeah, they passed through, but I'm not real worried about going back in. I didn't there for a little while. We did the next day only to verify and try to get hair, and then I just kind of stayed off that side for a little while. So.
Wow. I want to tell you what, that is a really good experience to share. I'm going to tell you, I really, if people say to you that they cannot find that terrifying, I don't know what's wrong with them. It definitely terrified me.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. It was a lot worse than even that night up at the on the San Juan River where we had them throw rocks and got hit by the rock and all that. It was scarier than that night actually, and primarily because I had people. But even on the beginning of that night, I was in there alone and got grunted at and got some real good sounds of the big male in there moving and stuff. And he was only probably less than 20 feet. And we got some pretty cool video of them throwing rocks at us and stuff. But that still wasn't as scary as this. And I think mainly because of the way it started, because it wasn't expecting me to be there, and I was not expecting to be there. And you could tell it was a surprise. I spooked whatever it was, got spooked. And so I thought from there that's usually a bad sign. So.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you would like to share with us? We have probably about 10 minutes left.
Well, I think primarily where we're moving at right now as far as the research and stuff so people know what to look forward to. I'm trying to develop some platforms to be able to get a lot of this video and audio out that YouTube's been giving me personally a lot of help as far as uploads and things from this connection. As you saw, we had the help with this connection earlier. And
right.
It's hard to get good service out of here so I can get this stuff going.
I know how you feel.
Yeah, oh man. But we're going to be pumping a lot more in, and I'm going to be applying quite a bit more technology as far as the aerial stuff goes and posting a lot of these big high altitude looks and everything, because as many eyes as can see them, the better. I mean, because it's very difficult to pick out anomalies, and we're shooting at such high resolution now. We'll be producing at C4K resolution, so that's 4 times basically more than 1080. So we're talking 4,000 vertical lines. So we'll be able to capture a lot of detail at great distance that others aren't really getting in the field right now. And so that's going to be something that's kind of new and others can participate in. And then we're also moving to try to get this particular area protected, because I got wind that there were some project plans in the works to put 100 miles of hiking trails. These are 6-foot wide maintained trails. They clear the brush out. And they're going to put this in 30 miles of river system. So that means absolutely, yeah, and there's 285 species of major vertebrates there, between birds and rabbits and lizards, and 285 species and dozens of species of birds. I mean, there's several species of just woodpecker. So this riparian zone is also the only one. This corridor is the only one that connects the foothills of the Rockies there with the other ranges that extend farther south. So we're trying to kind of bring up the awareness at the same time. I mean, it's hard to do with a species that doesn't exist and say you need to not build in here because of a species that doesn't exist. But we're going to do the best we can to show that some type of large native omnivore exists there, and try to block that effort if possible. So that's about it for us, I think, right now. Other than we're going to shoot another trip up towards what we call the Lodge feature, which is where all the danger's been going on. We got in there last time and ended up finding a blood trail from somebody who got hurt real bad down in there, and tried to track them out and figure out what happened. And that took basically the research day. So, but we've got another trip planned up there as soon as we get the right people on board.
Okay, so are you, what are you saying here, that you're receiving reports of aggressive Sasquatch in that area?
Yeah, big time. And there's been a lot of incidents happen that are publicly swept under the rug, and they're deflated, and details not given, and this and that. But it's basically the 411 trip. I mean, right along with it. But the deal is, I mean, we've been in the middle of the area. We've seen markers and structures indicating that people probably shouldn't be there, and the Forest Service continually cuts these trails and allows the people, and it's creating an adversarial situation. So that's kind of where we're,
all for, what is that, tourism. It's
I know.
And
there's no reason to really use that lower trail either. It's a dark and dismal. It gets into real deep, rugged stuff. And I know people love to go experience that, but as far as having to do it, and I know the personnel up there know what's going on, because, you know, I've been told by guys that work up in there, they pull up to a dozen trees a night off that one trail section. And trees aren't falling everywhere. They keep trying to close it off. And we've seen trees in the same slot, basically, one tree on top of another, that were 5 and 7 high, where the Bigfoots would place a tree, Forest Service cuts it, right, just trail width, both sides, so it's still there. And then the Bigfoots place another one, and they cut it, and another one they cut it, another one they cut it, and it ends up being 5 to 7 high on each side of you, and they've cut through. It's like walking through a log wall. And you can see where they've been doing this for years. So yeah.
Oh my goodness! But I've seen the same thing down here, and if I've gone into an area and then gone back a week later and can't get through there. Trees down across. Yeah, and generally that's the deal. They'll rip out an area. They'll create what we call a kill zone, or in the military that's what it is, where you take and clear an entire area around your inner border, and you put an outer boundary and an inner boundary, and the area in between you can watch what's going on, and you make it difficult to move through it. And they surround their domicile areas that way, at least in the high mountains. That's what we've seen. And I don't know if it's family groups or it's all big males that hang out together or what, because I don't see the same type of occupation evidence that I see in these river bottoms. It's quite a bit different, and most of it's huge and very purposeful. Look how big we are. Here's where you can go. Please don't go in here. Stuff like that. Well, it makes me think that it's a final stronghold, and they don't really have anywhere else they can go safely. Do you think?
And you're dead on it. You hit it, and that's what it seems like. It seems like it's almost like, hey, all we're asking for is this little canyon. That's it.
Exactly.
And that's all. And if you stay over there, nobody's going to have a problem. And we'll mark it real well for you, no question. We'll put trees along the whole 4 miles, no problem. We'll mark it really good, And no, it's a continual human thing, It's no, we want this trail here, so. But
and you're doing what you can to help out, and I think that's very commendable. I wish you all the luck in the world. I don't know how you're going to manage to do it, but I
thought we might get into court recently with the KRTV News here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, tried to be smart, put on a presentation, and call out Dr. Dyer for misappropriation of funds, even though it was discretionary. They could have had a pizza party or anything else, But, you know what I mean? But they got down on him for doing research, and actually we paid for all the research. C4C, Crypto Four Corners with JC and them, they covered all their own bills. We cover all our own bills. So none of the research was even covered by that. They held a public disclosure, seminar for faculty and the public, because that's what the public wanted. And due to that, we almost tried to drag them, or I would have actually if they hadn't conceded, drug them into court. So I could have just presented the physicality and presented the evidence in a court for once, just to make it happen, and get the ball rolling that way, if nothing else. But the news saw their weakness, I guess, and they conceded and pulled the information back that was basically derogatory about us. And they still pointed the same fingers at the professor, and and that's just, it's what you got to do to try to make this thing right, But
that happens all the time with with the scientific people that sacrifice their, I don't know if sacrifice is the right word, lend their degrees in towards this, and they just seem like they get put up on the chopping block. If you notice do you know what I'm talking about? They become the sacrificial lamb, it
seems ludicrous because they could be some of the smartest and most respected people there is until they say something or do something that goes against someone's opinion, even if that opinion's uninformed. And
exactly. Until they tell the
basis
truth
of prejudice.
about something like this. Right.
Yeah.
When they tell the truth about something that is actually real, but they don't want.
And when a university, an executive director of a university, part of his job is to represent his demographic and provide for them avenues to pursue careers and interests around them. And in Gallup, that's the res, and that's what the people wanted, which is why the seminar was the largest they'd ever had in 47 years in the history of the university. In fact, it doubled the largest crowd, or I would say participants in the seminar. It actually doubled anything they'd ever had before. So that should speak for itself. What represents the demographic,
exactly.
But apparently no, it's not good enough, or they should have different, or whatever,
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think we have run out of time. I have been so involved in what you're saying, I didn't even realize we're no longer on the air.
Are you serious, then? We talked it right out?
Yes, we
nice.
did. I don't even know when it went off, so I don't know how long we have before they shut us down. So I guess we better say good night. And I do want to thank you very, very much for coming back on the show. And I just really enjoyed it, and our listeners are going to get their Merry Christmas present, and so we're all good.
Well, thank you so much, Laurie. It's been a pleasure. It always is. I really enjoy showing up with you.
Oh, I tell you what, I enjoyed your stories immensely. I just hope I can sleep tonight.
Oh, no.
Well, you have a wonderful Christmas holiday. Merry Christmas to you and your family. And
I hope the best for everyone over there as well. I don't know who dropped off and who we lost, but make sure to pass that on.
Yeah, I will. Poor Jeff, he is going to be so disappointed, especially when he listens to this show. He is going to go, golly. But he's rescuing an owl, a little creature. So he's doing his good deed for the Christmas season. So, thank you so much, Robert, for coming on. And I know they're going to be begging me to have you back, so I'll be calling you soon. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye now.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, everyone, we just want to wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas. Be safe out there. We'll see you January 2nd. We'll be having Jim Sherman from Minnesota. We'll have 2 people from Minnesota next month. Isn't that crazy? Never had anybody from Minnesota. Now we'll have 2. Okay. So, Merry Christmas to everyone out there. Lauren, say Merry Christmas. Ricky, say Merry Christmas, and we'll say goodbye.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, everybody.
Yes. Merry Christmas. Find that outro.
At the very bottom.
I know. Bye.